Hi everyone, welcome to Shenanigans with Shreya. I wanted to talk about university life really. I'm back from my day at uni, which was literally one lecture, and then checking out career fairs on campus and getting lunch. We went into one of the buildings that I haven't really had the chance to go around properly, and it was just really nice to see the resources available and the space, which is pretty great. And also, I found out that we have a media room at our university where essentially they have mics for people who want to film and record things. It was like a studio setup, and I was like, you bet I will be using that for the podcast. So I'm really excited to start using that soon. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the art of being a university student because there's so many facets of being a student, especially if you're living on your own for the first time, moving away from home and settling into college life, essentially. For a lot of us, this is the beginning of the college year. At the time of recording, I'm on my second academic week of the university year, which I know is a little bit later than most. A lot of my friends back home, they've started almost a month ago. But I'd say for most of us, we've just kind of settled in, getting used to a routine, getting used to our timetable, things like that. So for context, I am doing my master's degree in the UK. So I am familiar with the college and university lifestyle essentially from my undergrad time. But I have moved to a completely different country because my undergrad was in Ireland. I was familiar with how things worked a bit more. And now I'm in the UK in England. So I am still kind of learning a lot about the country, the culture, things that are said differently here, the accent, which is different. And I've been really enjoying my time. My undergrad and my postgrad experiences have been so different from one another, which is really crazy. And I want to cover the whole topic of moving in and settling into university with academic hacks on how to stay on top of the academic hustle, while also balancing routine. I'm a huge time utilizer and planner, and it really helps me be more organized in my life. So let's talk about moving in and settling in. So I'd say the number one thing about moving at any point in life really is that be conscious that it's going to take time to get used to everything. Because I know it can be annoying that you don't know where the closest grocery store is and it's taking you a bit longer to figure things out. When I first moved to my block where I'm staying, my accommodation, it literally took me 45 minutes to try to figure out where my building was located. And then I was just there with my 20 kg suitcase on this hilly inclined road trying to figure out. But again, I think consciously reminding yourself that, okay, I will get used to this one day. I will be able to walk somewhere without having to look down at Google Maps, or I'll be able to figure out, how to get from point A to B without it being a task that requires major brain strength. So I think giving yourself that grace is really important to maintain a good positive mindset and not to get frustrated easily with unexpected setbacks that are going to happen when you move somewhere. I think also what might help is keeping a list, preferably on your phone, whenever you think, oh my God, I don't have a pillow, or I forgot to get lip balm, or I forgot to get earbuds, things like that. So I think keeping a list of things you need to get, and also figuring out when you'd be able to get it. So a lot of the times you might just put this in the list, but then you don't have an actual plan on when you're going to get it. So I'd say it is important to figure out when you have the time in your schedule. It might be after classes, it might be before you go home, where you can go get what you want, block it out in an afternoon. For me, I usually think Thursdays because I don't really have classes on Thursdays, and I try to keep Thursday as cleaning, laundry, all of that jazz, and getting things that I might not have. And also, a major thing that I'd really encourage everyone to do is to try to make friends with your flatmates, try to make an effort to put yourself out there and cohabitate, because essentially you're going to be living with these people for a while. So it's nice to be able to just vibe, because genuinely my undergrad experience was very different to what my postgrad experience has been in terms of making friends in general, but specifically flatmates. In my undergrad, it was kind of difficult to make friends. I'd say everyone's a bit awkward, and I've actually noticed that a lot of postgraduate students that I know now have pointed that out, that undergrad students are a bit new to this, so they're in a different headspace. Though I did make my best friend of all time at my university accommodation, my undergrad. But again, it was one of those things that's so rare to vibe with people. But in my postgrad, I've noticed that it's just so much easier. My entire flat, most of them, they're just absolutely amazing, to the point where I'm looking forward to bumping into someone in the kitchen and just yapping, It's come to the point where we've had kind of sleepover sessions almost, where we're yapping until 1 a.m. we have dinner together, which I think is so nice because I've never had that before. I do think that postgraduate students are a bit more confident in making friends, but I do think that whichever phase of life you're in, just like give it your best in trying to make connections and be proactive about like organizing. Hey, do you want to have a game night or something? Do you want to go to Tesco with me? Things like that. They do make a difference. Obviously, I know all too well that you can't force being friends with people if that's not being reciprocated. It's difficult sometimes. And in those situations, I would recommend making the most of it, still going out on your own and figuring out what brings you joy without having to have a group of people around. Yeah, I also do think that having a staple meal that won't require too much thinking or brain power on figuring out how to make it, but will also give you your nutrition. I'm a huge advocate for having balanced meals, having enough protein. I do think making wraps, they're so easy, especially if you make them like protein and nutrient dense. Put a little bit of cheese on top, melt it. It's pretty good. And obviously, occasionally, if you're into cooking elaborate meals, do that. Cooking is quite therapeutic for me, and I love being able to try different types of food. And it just brings so much spice to life, you know what I mean? There are so many resident activities that are always present. And I feel like when I was in my undergrad, I did not make use of them enough. And I'm making an active effort to get as involved as I can in, university activities and resident specific activities, which are really just there to help you settle in and for you to meet people. And again, if there are too many things happening and it's overwhelming, which it can be because there's just so many things happening at university all the time, make a list of things, go through it one by one and break it down kind of day by day instead of overwhelming yourself. Moving on to the academic side of things, I do think I have a different approach this year than I've had before. The first thing would be that I recommend reading the recommended reading before lectures because it gives you a chance to prep for lectures or, catch up before lectures. I've never done this consistently before, but I've started to do it now and I genuinely think it improved the way that I approach lectures. It's more intentional, and because I have an idea going in, if I don't understand certain slides or something, when I glance at it before the actual lecture, I'm able to look it up. So when the actual lecture is being taught, I just know more. And I also do recommend making a group with your course mates. It's just so beneficial. And if you're figuring out a new topic together or a new skill, you can just sit down and learn together essentially. If you're stuck on something, you can be stuck together. And then you can kind of almost like bond over the fact that something is really tough and you're figuring out how to do it. It just makes things so much more nicer and livelier. And I also remember recently, I was just like, hey guys, does anyone want to come to Tesco with me? And it became this like group Tesco haul, which I just thought was really sweet. And again, I completely understand what it's like to not have a group of people with you because sometimes people are just not aligned and you just have to be proactive on your own. If you really haven't found like your group of people, I highly recommend going to societies, events, like be consistent with it. Even if you're busy, at least, once or twice a week, try to go out for just an hour or two and try these different skills. I made this list of all the societies that I'm interested in, fully aware, by the way, that this list is like massive. It has probably over 300 things on it. Realistically, I'm not going to be able to do every single thing on this list, but I pick random ones and the aim is to do a couple of these events a week, daily maybe, if something is going on. And I've been able to take part in just things that I've always had a vague interest in, but never really like dived in. And it's just such a fun experience. I recently went to gymnastics, which, mind you, I haven't done gymnastics since I was like 4 or 5, and being able to go and really just like push myself out of my comfort zone, because I usually stick with things that are more my alley, like music or science and things like that. Gymnastics was very like physically exerting, and I'm really proud that I did that because I was able to have this wonderful experience. And similarly, I'm going to try judo or karate and things like that. And I just feel like even if you just have like a vague 1% interest in something, go ahead. You never know who you might meet, what memories you make, and it's just a bit of fun. So I think even with like your friends from your course and your friends from your flat, if you're living in accommodation, it would be nice to make plans with them. And it's nice when they're also like proactive with it. Like they join in and it's just fun to be together, which is really refreshing. And there are always like resources at college that are there to help you out in terms of, it might be friends or just events and things like that. I have another tip, which I feel like is really underrated, but every time I've spoken about this to someone, it makes so much sense. So when I was in my 5th year of secondary school, which is essentially year 11 in the UK, it's during the Leaving Cert cycle in Ireland when you're preparing for the exams that get you into university, essentially. I used to feel like there was just so much homework all the time. You come back in the evening, I'd do my homework all evening. Before I knew it, it was like dinner time and time to go to bed. And then it's like I barely had enough time for myself. And I remember reading somewhere is like if you have a day to give to school, your job, homework, you have at least an hour to give to yourself. And I was like, honestly, yeah, because you want to be able to nurture yourself and bring yourself up to speed and not overwhelm yourself or exhaust your energy. So I made this thing where I keep my Saturdays 100% off. And by that, I mean, I don't do any academic things. I literally just do what I want. I might watch a movie. I might spend the whole day on my laptop or just vegetating. But I choose to do that because it's like a little holiday for me. The reason I chose Saturday was because Friday is technically still a working day in most places. It won't really feel like a holiday. And then Sunday, you're going to be thinking about Monday. So it's like the only day that really works is Saturday. Genuinely, the quality of your life will just become better because you won't be running on your hamster wheel all the time. Now, coming to the career side of things, I was actually talking about this with my friends today. So in the UK and Ireland, we have graduate program schemes, which are designed for fresh graduates out of a completed course. So for example, you finished your undergraduate degree, so you have a bachelor's or you have a master's. They're specifically designed for graduates, usually 2-year programs in a company, which will introduce you to their way of management, their work, and you can learn leadership and skill sets that you might be looking into. There are obviously different types depending on your course and your skill set, but I do think it's a great way to get a job, essentially. The weird thing I always find about this is that graduate program schemes, their applications always close the end of the year. So it's always like October, November, December, which is almost a full year like before the program starts. For example, right now it's October. And if I were applying now, I'd be applying for things in September 2026, right? But these applications are going to close. Like some have closed already in mid-October in 2025. I guess it's because the application process is long. I learned this the hard way because when I finished my undergraduate degree, I was like, what do you mean I can't apply to like graduate program schemes anymore? But that's just the way it is. I would recommend applying to graduate program schemes, even if you're not 100% sure that that might be the thing for you. It's good to have options to choose from. Coming back to university life in general, if you feel like you're running out of time, because there are so many things happening at all times and you want to get involved, there are ways to be overwhelmed by the amount of things you have to do. I think visualizing your time using a platform, Google Calendar, will help you outline what your non-negotiables are and how you can balance your time to make sure that you're spending time in ways that you want to. So I know not everyone is going to be a planner, but I feel like it really helps you to like visually see where your time is going. You can move things around by being like, oh, A doesn't really require 2 hours of work. I could just reduce that by half an hour so that I get half an hour more from B. Google Calendar does help visualize. I also use Notion a lot to just basically plan out my life and keep a track of my notes. And I feel like organization and planning, if you've never done it before, just give it a go and see how you feel about it, because I cannot recommend this enough. It's genuinely changed the way that I view so many aspects of like time in general. And also because like, time is valuable. Now, this is a disclaimer. Don't make rigid plans either, because I know there are people who are like extreme minute to minute planning, which I do not agree with, because that just adds like more stress to your life and you do not need that. I feel like keep these plans and schedules as a guideline. And if things happen a different way, it's completely fine. As long as you kind of have the intention of working with your time, that you have time working for you rather than against you. Because sometimes it can happen. It's like, oh, I had planned with my friend that just came up last minute. Fine, whatever. I stayed up late chatting with people. Fine. It's like not the end of the world if a plan does not go like 100%, which is something I have learned over time. I did want to talk a little bit about mindset, because in my undergrad, I was very overwhelmed and very academically focused. Essentially, it was my first time, living away from home. COVID had just happened, so I didn't really have the best like starting college experience because of social distancing and stuff. And I was in a new city and I was like just figuring out so much, and I was so young. I was 18, and I felt like my first entire year almost just went with me figuring out my space. I did enjoy my undergraduate, but I didn't enjoy it the way that I'm enjoying my master's. I feel like in my master's, I was already just so used to this whole like moving in process, and I was prepared for what was to come. I wasn't like caught off guard in so many areas that I was in my undergrad. I'm more older now, I'm 22, so I feel like I have ways to work around if I get overwhelmed with anything or if something comes up, like I have better tools to deal with it. And I was also like speaking to one of my course mates about this as well, and she said the same thing, that in her undergrad she was really academically focused as well. I think it also has to do with the fact that if you're an academic achiever, and especially in secondary school, it's all you talk about. Okay, you got to get the highest points, blah blah blah. There's this competitiveness with your secondary education that you're trying to get into the course you want, and you're really studying. And the university cycle is a bit different to the secondary school cycle, and adjusting to that might not be that intuitive, like it wasn't for me anyways. So I feel like now in my master's, I'm much more used to this academic university cycle because I've gone through it so many times before. And I also think a lot of it has to do with the fact that as we grow older, we don't really care about what other people think as much, and we do things for us rather than waiting for a big group of unrealistic ideal friends to do it with you. So I really, really do think that each phase of life is just so cool, and make the best of it. So my phrase for my master's is just have fun, like work smarter, have fun. And I'm actively really diving into all these things that I never thought I'd do. Even just like let yourself grow in and out of situations. Sometimes something might work for you, sometimes it might not. Sometimes a friend group might grow close to you, but then you might grow apart, and that's completely fine. I allow the dynamic and transient nature of life to do its magic. I really do like to believe that your world and your life is working for you and not against you, and believe a little bit in magic. So yeah, thank you for listening. This is essentially the first episode, which is wild. I'm really excited to embark on this podcast journey. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.